In this video, we're going to be talking about keyframing, and keyframing is just basically setting instances along the timeline for your animation to change from one thing to another. And so with your mouse over the viewport, if I hit I can do keyframe any of these things. So we have location, rotation, scale. We also have combinations of those items. I'm going to go ahead and do location, rotation, scale. And over here you can see that this just turned yellow. Those show me that those sections on there are keyframed. I could also keyframe dimensions, for instance. If I go and look at my timeline, I'll notice that there's a little yellow mark there representing that this has been keyframed at that time period. If I go, let's say 10 frames in, so default setting is to do 24 frames per second. So this wouldn't even be half a second, it'd be a little bit less than that. If I go to 12 frames, and you could use this to increment forward or backwards, of course, then I'll be at half a second. If I take my cube, let's say I move it up, let's say I rotate it around, and let's say I scale it down, and then if I hit I can do location, rotation, scale. And I'm going to go ahead and go to 24 frames. And let's scale it up. This time I'm going to keyframe it a little bit differently. Do that just to make it a bit different here. And let's go ahead and do that. And so I rotated it a little bit more, changed its shape a little bit. I'm going to go over to where it says location, and I'm going to go ahead and first of all change the location here. And with my mouse over the location group in the navigation pane where it's green, green represents that there's been a keyframe there. If I hit I, now I have a just the location keyframe. And if I keyframe rotation, now those two are, but this one isn't. So if I move my timeline slider at all, I lose the scaling that I had done. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the beginning here. I'm going to change my end time to 24 because I only have 24 frames. And I'm going to hit play. And there's my little animation. Okay, I can rotate around, see what it's doing. My cube kind of gets all small there and disappears out of the way. So you can do, I'm going to go ahead and delete my cube here. I'm going to go into orthographic mode by hitting 5 on the number pad. I'm going to go into front orthographic view by hitting 1. I'm going to add a sphere now. We're going to do some more keyframing. So we're going to add a sphere. I'm going to change its size up to, let's go ahead and do 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sphere and I'm going to lift it very high, kind of high, not really high, but about that high from the red axis. So I'm quite a few units up actually. And I'm going to hit I and do location, rotation, scale. And then I'm going to go forward to about, I'll go to about 20. Could probably do a little bit less, but that's okay. And I'm going to bring this down, and then I'm going to scale it down. So I'm going to do S and Z. And I'm going to bring this all the way down here, and we're going to look at how this looks. I want to make something that looks like a bouncing ball. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to show you what you need to think of as you keyframe, because this isn't going to look quite right. Okay, I'm going to change this to 50 frames here just for now. And so I'm going to go back to the beginning. And so I have those 2 points keyframed, so you'll notice that the ball actually starts to get thinner as it goes down towards where I keyframed it. So really, that's not quite right. So what I want to do is I'm going to hit Z for this, and I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go over to my keyframes here, and I could keep on doing, but basically scale was what I had changed. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to say delete keyframes, or what would be even better to use is clear single keyframes, and actually that's just this one. I should have done Z there because that's the only one that's keyframe there. So clear single keyframes, or I could say delete keyframes, and I delete that keyframe for that spot. And in this case, I actually cleared this entire channel. It's not even keyframe from above, and which I don't need to have those two individual ones keyframed. If I right click on a spot, I can also see that I have insert keyframes, insert single keyframe, and so I have some other options there too as well. Okay, so I decided not to change this, but what I want to do is I'm going to, for some reason I still have that Z keyframe there, but that's okay. If I move this, there we go. That's actually what I want it to do at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back frame by frame. Oops, I just hit play backwards. I'm going to go back frame by frame using this little, where the frame is, using the back arrow until I get right almost to the bottom there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keyframe the scale. So I'm going to do, where it says scale here, I'm going to do I, keyframed all of those. And so the ball hasn't changed. But then I'm going to go to the next frame here. And so I'm going to go to 17. I'm going to do S and Z, and I'm going to scale it so that the bottom of this is right along the line there. And then I'm going to hit I, and I'm going to choose scaling. I'm not going to keyframe those other ones, just that. And then I'm going to go another frame and do SZ. And get it kind of there. And then I'm going to do I and do scaling. And it should put your mouse right over the last item that you selected when you're doing that. So I'm going to go again, a frame forward here. We went through 20 frames, so we're almost done. SZ. And I can scale it down like so. And then hit I and do I'm just going to do scale there, and then I'm going to do one more frame. There we are. S, Z. And I'm going to hit I, and we'll just do scaling. Okay. So now, if I go back to the beginning, I can hit play, and there it kind of looks like it's going down like that, but then we get it stopping. So what I want to do is I'm going to go and extend that out a little bit. I'm going to go to frame 20. Let's do frame 30 here, and I'm going to bring this up about this high, and I'm going to do I'm going to say location rotation. And then I'm also going to go, I don't want to scale it here because then it's going to change that scale across all of these. What I want to do is I'm going to go a frame forward now. So I'm going to do frame 21. I'm going to do S and Z. And then I'm going to go to keyframe that. So I'm going to hit I, I'm going to do scaling. And then I'm going to go another frame forward. And so we're going to go to 22. I'm going to do S and Z. And then we're going to go another frame forward. And this time I might not actually expand it all the way to the ground, as if it's kind of expanding as it goes. So I'm going to go one more frame forward here. And actually that's quite a lot further. So I'm going to do S, Z, yeah, we're going to lift that up so that the scale is actually, we can do a scale of 1. Maybe I want to actually go past 1 for the moment. And actually I do want it to go past 1. Yep. I'm going to go all the way to the ground there. So I can click, and then I'm going to do I, and I'm going to do scaling. And then we're going to go one more frame, and I'm going to still expand this one in the Z direction, like so, but that one I'm not going to go all the way down. So I'm going to click I, I'm going to do location, scaling, and then I'm going to go another frame forward, and I'm going to scale it back down a little bit. Not quite there yet, but I'm going to do scaling, and then one more. And we're going to just go over to here where it says Z. I'm going to type in 1 so that my scale is 1. I'm going to hit I and do scaling. Now, I want to see how this looks, so I'm going to go back to beginning, hit play, okay, and there's my bounce. Okay, and I can, of course, hit 5 on the number pad to go back to orthographic, and there we get our little animated bounce of the ball. So that's how you do keyframing. Be aware, though, that if you tab in to edit an object, let's say that I got face mode here, and let's say I'm going to take this kind of middle section, and let's do E, scale it in like so. I'm going to tab out. If I edit the object in there, that's going to change the way that the object looks throughout the animation. And so just know that you won't change things. You can also keyframe things like animations. There's most fields you can keyframe one way or another. You can always right click on it, see if there's a keyframe option, or if you hold your mouse over it and do I. These of course aren't going to change starting in clipping and the view things, but you can keyframe a lot of stuff. Even sometimes some of the settings and things like that in these you can also keyframe. For instance, if we do, let's go to particles and say plus. So now I have this generating particles as it's bouncing. And if I go over and keyframe something, so this one won't let me keyframe, but again, you can look and see what can you keyframe. So anything you hold it over, you hit I on. It's a fast way to find out if you can keyframe or not. If you're not changing it, then that's not a bad thing. But for instance, my velocity now, if I go wherever that was keyframed, let's say that my normal velocity here is 0, and I'm going to say I to keyframe that one. And let's say that this is also I right there, okay? And then let's say I go to, so here it's already 1, but let's go here, and I'm going to say I, sure, I on those, and then let's go all the way to, well, let's actually go just a little bit more. And now, so you should also know on this, as I do this, is that if you keyframe a field and then let's say you change it, so let's say I take Z and I do 5 and hit enter, if I don't re-keyframe that, then that is not changed. So I'm going to change this to 5 like I did before, and this time I'm going to hit I over it. That should be re-keyframed. So now we got it changing as we go. So let's see what happens. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning of it. I'm going to hit play. Got my particles going, and then I can see that those started to shoot up. Remember, this is a radius of 6 blender units. So maybe on that last one, I need to make it a lot more. And I actually managed to stop it on the frame that was keyframed. And so let's say I type in 30 and hit I. Okay, let's see what happens there. So I'm going to go back and hit play, and then they start to shoot up like that. So play around with it, try things out. Introduction to keyframing.